Everyone, and welcome to the next lesson in this series on AWS fundamentals. So today we'll be talking about Amazon ECS. So we can just type in ECS here and just bookmark it. So basically with Amazon ECS, we'll be able to run and create our Docker containers. And usually with these containers, they will consist of a Docker image which they will be running. So typically in AWS, you'll upload a Docker image to Amazon ECR, Elastic Container Registry. Like I said, this is like a GitHub-like repository, but just for Docker images. And then after that, you're going to connect your Docker image in ECR to your container in Amazon ECS. So let's go ahead and click on ECS. Okay, so this is Amazon Elastic Container Service. Okay, so as we can see here, with Amazon ECS, we'll be able to deploy, manage, and scale our Docker containers running our application. So this will basically be our Docker image. So we can go ahead and keep it simple and get started. Okay, so this is the whole overview of Amazon ECS. So on the outside here, on this exterior, we'll have something called our cluster, okay? So our cluster is pretty much the external part of Amazon ECS here. Okay, and within that cluster, it's going to, the cluster is going to house something called a service. Now, typically what we'll do is we'll create a service, and this service is going to run a particular number of tasks. Okay, now each of these tasks will have something called a task definition. Okay, so these are all the settings and configurations that we want these tasks to be running on. And the most important thing is our container definition. So in our container, okay, we will be able to define and set a few policies and settings and configure our Docker image, okay? So that is what we can do here. So we're going to basically connect our Docker image to our container, and then this task definition is going to encapsulate the whole process. Okay, but there will be other settings along with the task definition as well. And then what we're going to do is create a service, and this service is going to create many tasks based on this task definition. Okay, so I won't go into too much detail. Okay, that's just the basic essence of it. Okay, so here we can choose a container definition. So this one here, sample app, the Docker image basically is that of HTTPD. So we can see this is Apache. This one here, Nginx image here, of course is Nginx. And the Tomcat web server, it's based on the Docker image of Tomcat. Okay, so just try and see this whole process within. Okay, so we're going to keep it simple, and we're just going to choose sample app. So we can see here the memory and CPU is very low, but this is perfect since we just want to get a general idea of how Amazon ECS works. Okay, and we have a task definition here. So as we can see here, it is basically a blueprint for our application and describes one or more containers through attributes. So basically with our task definition, we will specify our attributes, and with our container definition, we're going to specify our things such as our Docker image, the amount of memory and CPU that we require on that container itself. So try and see it this way. We're going to have a Docker image which is going to be running on our Docker container, and then we're going to run this Docker container. Or a simpler way is we're going to have a Docker image stored on our container, and we're going to run those containers. Okay. So we can now go ahead and say next. Okay, and we've done the definition. Task definition is automated for us. And we're going to define our service. So as we see here, so this service is going to allow us to run a specific number of instances based on our task definition. So we can also typically add a load balancer if you would like, but we're going to keep it simple and just say none. So you can say next. Okay, under cluster name, we can give this any name here. Okay, so basically, like I mentioned before, our cluster pretty much houses our entire infrastructure all together. So if we were to create another cluster with its own set of tasks and task definitions along with the service, it's going to be separate. Okay, so kind of see the cluster as like the house and everything in it as like objects in a house. So like a lamp, table, chair. Try and see it that way with the cluster being the house. Okay, you can say next. Review, you can just check everything here. Everything is fine, it seems. and we can create our cluster. Now, as you can see, it's preparing, okay? It's going to create a cluster, and it's going to create its own task definition along with a service. And this service is going to create a specific number of tasks. It can be 1 or it can be 100. And that's what's going to happen here. And each of these tasks will be running a task definition. Okay. Along with that, we're going to create a log group, a CloudFormation stack, VPCs, subnets, and also security groups. Okay. Right. So that's going to take some time. Well, it's almost done actually. So we can actually wait for that and then we can move ahead. All right, so that is basically what is going on here. We're just propagating and setting up all of our resources before we actually move on. Okay, so actually I'm going to wait. So let's pause and then wait till it's done, and then we'll get right back to it. Right, so everything is set up and ready to go. So we can scroll up and hit View Service. And we can actually see, if we click on tasks here, under our service here, our service is called Sample App Service. And we can see within this service, one of our tasks is just currently pending. Okay, it will take some time. And we can now see we have a task running at the moment. Okay. Now this task that's running is based on a task definition. So the first thing I want to show you is if you click on this task here. Okay, and we scroll down, we can actually connect to this task. So basically, we can just copy this public IP that we have here. Okay, and I'm going to paste it in. And there we go. So this is our sample application that is now running on a container in Amazon ECS. So well done. So this is generally the idea of how this whole process works. Okay, so you can see it. There it is. Perfect as we see it. Now, what we can actually do is, let's look at this a bit further. So we're going to go back to our cluster here. Okay. And services. Okay, so we have our service here, Sample App Service. Let's go back to our task. And we can see that this task is based on a task definition. So don't worry about the number. This will be different for you. If this is your first time, it will just have first run task definition, or it will just say first run task definition 1 or 2. So go ahead and click on this. And basically here in the JSON, we can see our task definition here with all the presets and all the configuration settings, such as the task definition ARN, the name. We can also see, if we scroll up, let's keep it a bit simple. We can also see basically that code that we saw earlier in the HTML. So we can see here, congratulations, your application is now running on a container in Amazon ECS. So we can kind of see that this testing data here as well, with this index.html. We can also see the port mapping, so the host port, the protocol, the container port. And we can also see that it's based on this task definition with these logs. Okay, so this is basically just the task definition, just defining and setting everything up for our container. Okay, so that's just basically the simple way of seeing it here. Okay, so we can actually scroll up. Let's actually move up here. So I'll go slowly so you can see basically what it consists of. So at least you get some rough idea. Let's go to Builder. Okay, so this is our task definition. So it also specifies a few things, such as the fact that we will be running on Linux. Okay, it requires the compatibility of Fargate. Now, I won't go into detail with this, so I'll keep it simple. So basically, when you create an ECS instance, okay, you can choose to make it serverless, or you can run it with a server. Now, basically, if you choose to run with Fargate, which we're running now, okay, there won't be any EC2 instances that we'll have to manage. Okay, that gets managed in the background. So this makes Fargate a serverless service. If, however, you choose to run it with EC2, okay, you're going to manage all these EC2 instances on your own. Okay, so that's a simple way of explaining it. Okay, so everything else here, we can also see the task size, such as the memory and the CPU allocated. And here is our container, actually. So here's our container, and if we click on this here, we can see a bit about our container definitions, such as our CPU units, our hard soft memory, and GPU, and our image. Okay, so this is the image. Now, technically speaking, if we were to create our own application, and we stored that Docker image in ECR, and then we pushed it to ECS, okay, and we were to create a Docker definition. So technically speaking, what would happen is we would create our container, and then we would assign our Docker image, which we push to ECR, would be right here connected to our container. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and run this container based on our task definition settings. Okay, and if you're wondering where do we define our Docker image, we define that in our container definition. Okay, so I can actually show you roughly how you can do that actually. So let's say you wanted to assign your Docker image to the container definition, to this here, okay? You would need to go back to your definition here, and you can see there are revisions. So these are updates on our definitions. So we can click on the latest one, say create new revision. Okay, and now you can see you can now edit this now, and you can edit things as you'd like, the operating system, the task memory, CPU, and here by the container, we can click on our container here. Okay, and this is where we will set our Docker image. So let's say you uploaded a Docker image to Amazon ECR. We can go ahead and paste a URI here. Okay, so this container will be running, okay, that specific Docker image. Okay, so that is how it will work. So this is how you will run your Docker image. So it's going to be set within your container definition. Okay, and this whole process here, everything that you see here, such as the memory, the CPU, and everything will be set in the task definition. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to go back. We don't want to edit this. And we can just go back here and click on this task definition again. And there we go. Okay, so typically what you can also do is you can create a JSON document, okay, which is basically which can specify our task definition along with the container definition as well. But I don't want to go into detail and confuse you guys, so I'll leave it at that for now. So we can go back. Okay, so another thing we can do, if we go back to our clusters, we open our cluster again, we can go ahead and update this service. So if we say update, okay, we're going to choose the latest task definition here, okay, the latest one, and we can see we're using Fargate, okay, and we're using Linux. What we can also do is, let's say there was an error with one of our, let's say, tasks, or there was something wrong that we needed to configure. We can always force new deployment. So what this will do is it will remove the tasks that we have running and simply redeploy our whole application. Okay, we can also scroll down and we can change the number of tasks. So let's say we want 2 or 3 tasks running. We can go ahead and do just that. So we can change the number of tasks that we want. And just a few things here that we can also adjust, such as the cluster, service name, platform version, and so on. I won't go into detail, but you get the idea. We can also add basically our load balancer and set auto scaling. So we can auto scale our infrastructure as well, which is pretty cool. Okay, so let's go back. All right, so that's it for now. Okay, I don't want to go into too much detail and confuse you guys. So that's just a short and quick introduction into Amazon ECS. I hope it made some sense to you in terms of container definition, task definition, services, and cluster. Now, I know I didn't go into detail, but this is just the basics of Amazon ECS. I just want to get you familiar with it, which is the most important thing. Okay, you don't need to know it in detail. Just if you have a rough idea, really goes a long way to understanding things. So if you can at least understand the concept of uploading your Docker images to Elastic Container Registry, and then going ahead and running your Docker image in your Docker container, or storing it, you could say, to a Docker container in ECS, like I showed you. Okay, then you've really learned a lot. And I know it's very small and simple, but you only need to understand the basics to really get this right. And that is the most important thing to understand, that we can basically run our Docker image, okay, once we assign it to our Docker container in Amazon ECS, okay? And that's the most important thing to take away from this. And just understand the 4 parts. Our container definition is where we set this. Then we have our task definition, our services, and our cluster. So as long as you can walk away with those key words or services, you're really good to go. Okay, so that's it for this. I just wanted to keep it simple and brief for you guys so you have some introduction to it. So what we can do now is we can delete this cluster. Okay, so you can just say delete. Oh, delete me, okay, and say delete. Now this will take a while, okay, it'll take a few minutes, but trust me, it will be deleted after a few minutes. So all you have to do is just wait for this to be finished, and then you'll get a notification message that shows up here, okay, that says that it was deleted. But what I'm going to do to make it easier for you guys so you're comfortable, I'm going to wait until this is done. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video, and once it's done, I'm going to show you what it looks like, just so you have some peace of mind and that you don't worry about it. So I'm just going to pause and wait, and then we'll be right back to it, and then we'll finish up. All right. All right, so that just took a few minutes, but as we can see now, our demo app cluster is deleted. And don't worry, all the resources that were created that you saw when we launched our cluster are all deleted, so don't worry about that. So everything will be gone and deleted, or at least on the verge, so it's all done. So as long as you see this message, and if you refresh and you don't see your cluster, that's a good sign and you're good to go. Okay guys, so this is it. Just a bit of an introduction into Amazon ECS, and like I said, just remember, as long as you can understand the concept of pushing your Docker image to Amazon ECR, Elastic Container Registry, and then adding it and assigning it to your container in ECS, then that's perfect and you're good to go. Okay, so as long as you understood that concept, that's enough for this lesson on Amazon ECS, and you're good to go. All right, guys, so that's it. Thank you very much, as always, for the support. I really appreciate it. And yeah, all the best, guys. Thank you.